Welcome to the Put On Waivers Media Group, home of the Put On Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
And welcome, everybody, to another glorious episode of the Put On Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, and of course, I am podcasting on the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day outside this afternoon. Now the rain decided to come back again. I mean, this Seattle weather is driving me crazy. PORSBR is my Twitter handle, and then Ryan Holmes is going to be joining us after the combine. He's not at the combine, but after the combine, he'll be coming back to the show. We have Anthony Lopez here. We all know him as Solo. This man is you can dig into his mind and find a whole lot of draft stuff in there, boy, I tell you. So I want to make sure he gets a chance to kind of put his stamp on this draft, this current draft class for the Raiders as we come up on this 2023 season. How you doing today?
I am doing great, man. I appreciate you having me on.
No problem. So let's just start back to front here. If the Raiders are, looking for some safety help, I mean, anywhere in this defense, I think Trayvon Moreg, looking at him on all 22, towards the end of the season, did a great job on some really talented tight ends. He's a keeper, but I think a lot of it, Max Crosby's a keeper, no question about it. But anywhere else, they need help on defense. So if they're looking for some safety help, where would the Raiders go in this draft to find it?
So I like two guys in the mid rounds that I think are going to fall into the mid rounds, like in that third, fourth, and fifth rounds. That I really feel like you can find a good guy there. One guy that I've been watching a lot, and I can't wait to see what he does in the combine, is Trey Dean III from Florida. He's a big safety. He's a super athletic. He's aggressive. Florida has some good players that get key positions in that regard. But I feel like if he falls into that third, fourth, fifth round range, I think he's got starter material. And a lot of people were down on Patrick Graham last year. I know a lot of people are down on that, but I feel like there are limitations on the defense for what you can do in terms of that, when a lot of the money that was presented into the team roster build in that regard was not quite on par with what a guy like that needed, especially in the secondary, because he's a very secondary-oriented defensive coordinator. So I like a big physical athletic safety from Florida named Trey Dean is one of the guys that I'm looking at. The other one is Sidney Brown from Illinois. I think he's going to be another guy that you could probably find in the mid-range. He might actually slip it or sneak up into the second round. I hope not. I hope he falls. But those are two guys I'm really looking forward to watching in the combine. Good athletic safeties, not afraid to hit, and are coachable guys. I think Trey Dean is going to be a steal for whoever gets him, to be honest with you.
Cool. Cornerback looks like, I mean, I know people are going crazy over the kid from Oregon, but he's going to go quickly. And I'm not sure that first pick is going to be available for a corner. What were your thoughts about the cornerback market in this year's draft?
So I actually am on board with a lot of corners in this draft. I think that Christian Gonzalez is very good, but you got another guy named Clark Phillips from Utah who's a big corner. He's likely going to go in the first round. Cam Smith from South Carolina was my top corner coming into the offseason. I think it's going to change a little bit depending on the combine and the pro results. So there's multiple guys that are going to be in that range of first and second round corners if that's where they decide to go. But a lot of people are talking about Devon Witherspoon from Illinois. Illinois has a great secondary, by the way, last year. It's pretty surprising coming from a school like that. But Devon Witherspoon, Keely Ringo is another guy from Georgia that people are looking at. There's going to be a couple of these guys are going to fall into the second and third round. If the Raiders are going to look for a quarterback, which I think they almost assuredly should do in the first round, then a lot of these guys that they're going to be able to have in key positions of need, like cornerback, safety, linebacker, offensive tackle, interior offensive line, and maybe another skill position wide receiver. A lot of this talent is going to fall into these back half of the drafts, especially when so many people are going to be keying on the top 5 quarterbacks in this draft that people are going to probably reach for. Let's be honest, in that first round. And so a lot of these guys are going to be able to fall. So a lot of the guys that I just listed, Keely Ringo, Devon Witherspoon is going to be a guy to look out for. Brian Branch is a safety that a lot of people think he's going to play corner or nickel in the NFL, but I think he's a multi-positional defender, which is kind of where the league is headed with their defensive backs. You have to be able to play inside and outside. Going to have to be able to play the box and play deep safety. So you're going to have the versatility. It's almost like a 3-and-D wing defender in the NBA. That's where all of the best defenders are now. Is that wing defender that can switch on the 2, switch on the 3, and be a multi-versatile defender. And I think that's where a lot of the defensive backs are heading. So a lot of these guys are going to be in that 6'1", 6 foot range at 205, 210 pounds, and they're going to have to be versatile inside and outside. I think this is a loaded draft for corners for sure.
So when you're evaluating a corner who might, you mentioned Clark Phillips, who I've seen firsthand because of this channel is Raiders and USC.
Yeah.
Is it harder to do it when you have a conference that doesn't have quarterbacks like the Pac-12 does? Because you mentioned some guys from Illinois. So is it harder to evaluate people like that because they may not be going up against top flight wide receivers, top flight passing games?
Yeah, I honestly think that defensive back is almost as difficult, probably as difficult to scout and evaluate as quarterback is. There's so many variables that you're looking for footwork, for athleticism, for versatility, for in and out of the scheme, because you don't really know a lot of the hardcore schemes and the call and what they're making on the field for those. So you don't know a ton of what their responsibilities are based on their defensive coordinator, their coaches. I mean, we're not NFL guys, so we don't have the ability to be able to talk to those guys in this situation. So you have to kind of use your eyes, use your eyeballs about the athleticism, how they read and react to certain plays. Go back and watch the all-22s on a lot of their tape. So it is difficult, especially with size. So you look at Clark Phillips, who might not be the biggest corner in that situation, or you might look at another guy who's like 6'2", 210, as opposed to a guy who's 5'10", 185. It's really difficult to weigh out their athleticism when they're going up against a Jordan Addison from USC, or they're going up against Josh Downs from North Carolina. You have to really weigh how their man coverage and their zone coverage skills based on the tape are going to differentiate between each game to game. So yeah, I think I think corner or secondary in general is the second hardest position to evaluate, in my opinion. There's so many variables that go into covering now, and it's easily one of the most difficult positions in football to have to cover wide receivers now, especially nowadays.
Yeah, no question about it. Linebacker. Here's my question: is do they have any coverage linebackers? Because they have not had good coverage linebackers since the late Thomas Howard and Kirk Morrison. I think the league Kirk Moore, those two would have been stars in today's NFL because what they could do. I want, especially Thomas Howard. I just feel like he was basically like just born ahead of his time as far as because he'd be the prototypical I can cover, I can tackle, I can cover, I can do all these things you need me to do kind of linebacker. But are there any of those guys in this draft? Because Lord knows, if you look at any PFF numbers or any numbers at all as far as what the Raiders linebackers did in the passing game, people were going 8 for 8, 10 for 10. Like it was pretty bad.
Yeah. So one of the only guys that I really, really like, his name is Owen Pepo from Auburn. I think that the league is transitioning into the way more athletic linebacker, whether if it's inside or outside. I think it's transitioning away from, you remember like the Brian Urlachers of the inside in the when they're 6'4", they're 245 pounds. I just don't think you can get away with that anymore, especially in the 3-4. They used to have the big interior linebackers in the 3-4, side by side next to each other that were calling the defenses, were able to play in the front seven and cover out. Well, you can't do that anymore because all the tight ends are split ends now. So all the tight ends are not playing in that 3-point on the line. Darren Waller, for example, our tight end, he doesn't play off the line primarily anymore. He plays on the split end. Like the last 2.5 years of his snaps count, the majority of them come from the split end where he's standing up trying to get a mismatch on the linebacker. So in terms of a pure coverage linebacker, I think you can find a complete one like Jack Campbell from Iowa, who I really like, or like I said, Popo from Auburn. But in terms of like pure coverage and a guy that I really think that is going to be able to cover the elite tight ends, I don't think he's in this draft. To be honest with you, I really don't.
That's fair.
Yeah.
What kind of player and what kind of if you had a comp for Trenton Simpson in the league, who would that could be if you had?
Oh, that's tough. Oh man.
He's a tough
pure comp for Trenton Simpson. Let me see. Let me check my notes real quick. Boy, that's tough, man. I've tried to stay away from Clemson. I've been sour on Clemson. To be honest with you,
we've been burned with Clemson a little bit.
Yeah, we've been burnt with Clemson just a tad bit. He's got really good size and really good athleticism. I would agree with a lot of people who think he is the best linebacker in the coming out. He might be the guy that slips into the first round, possibly. In that regard, maybe the back half of it. Yeah. But in terms of an actual comp, I don't really have a pure comp for him, to be honest with you. He has some of the complete skills that you look for in terms of a linebacker, like a leader in the front seven. So he can rush the passer. A lot of people have said Micah Parsons. I don't see that at all.
No, he's not. He's not
Micah Parsons at all. I don't think that he's Isaiah Simmons even, who was his team, one of his, one of the players that came out of Clemson. A lot of people are high on. I think he could play the hybrid and give you some pass rush, but I think he's primarily going to be the front seven tackler and the leader in the on a defense rather than the primary pass rusher or a guy who's going to be the super hybrid versatile guy. I think he's going to be a quality linebacker, but in terms of being like that elite talent, I don't think it's there. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. No, a good answer, because it's an honest one. You didn't make anything up, and I like that. And listen, and people, this is why I have Solo on the show, and I call him Solo. His name is Anthony, but because I can name a player, and it doesn't matter no matter where I name the player, he has something on that player. So trust. So he has that Rolodex ready to go at any moment as far as that goes. D-line, we know about, like, okay, the Jalen Carter is, this, that, and the other, and stuff like that. People were saying all these things about the Jalen Carter. They could also use interior pass rush. I mean, I think what Roderick Coleman was the last double sack guy from a D tackle position. I mean, we're going back now in the archives. I mean, who was
before or after Warren Sapp?
I mean, the Warren Sapp had double-digit sacks with the Raiders.
Yeah, he had 12. I think it is the second to last year with the Raiders.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have that. So but like who was the guy who the Raiders could pick up in the draft about that one?
So obviously everybody's going to mention Jalen Carter and whatnot, but I honestly, I'm going to stick to my guns on the Raiders taking a first round quarterback. Yeah. I am all pro quarterback right now for in the first round for the Raiders, but this is actually defensive line is one of my favorite is probably my favorite position or positional group in this draft. I think there's tons of guys all over that you're going to be able to get. So in terms of interior pass rusher, Javon Dexter from Florida is a guy that I like. I also really like Keanu Benton from Wisconsin. Kalijah Cansey is a guy that has been sneaking up boards that I've noticed. He started in that mid-tier second rounder, and now I see a lot of people putting him even in the top 20 and top 15. I mean, he might go there. That would shock me a little bit if he's there. That's the guy from Pittsburgh, the interior defensive tackle from Pittsburgh. But I think you'll be able to get a Javon Dexter or a Keanu Benton in the interior. Even the kid from Texas, I think his name is Mojo. But yeah, even a couple of those guys from the second to third to fourth round, you're going to be able to find some guys that are going to be able to rush the passer up the middle. And all they need really is someone who can just do it even a little bit. You just need any kind of interior rusher to take the pressure off of, and Chandler Jones, we know, is likely going to come back. And he actually played well down the stretch before he got hurt. But we'll need a lot more of that if he's going to even come close to his contract. But to even just alleviate some of the pressure on Max Crosby, so when the flags aren't being thrown for when he's being held or raked or tackled on the end, there'll be some sort of respite from the interior pressure that they can move the pocket with. But yeah, so look out for the kid from Florida, Javon Dexter, and look out for Keanu Benton from Wisconsin, two guys that I really like in this draft.
It's funny you mentioned that because you mentioned getting holding at the offensive line. You obviously saw the Super Bowl when they called the hold on Bradbury. There's a shot. Give Mark Slavers credit. He was like he tweeted, I couldn't see the hold because there was a illegal hands to the face. Just as soon as the hold, say the defense offensive lineman from the Chiefs just grabs a face mask and nobody calls
Yeah.
anything. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
it is. I was
bad.
pretty sour. I didn't watch the last minute and a half of the
I
Super Bowl.
turned it off.
I
turned it off.
As they threw the penalty, I turned it off. I thought that there's no way that they could really. It makes sense that that's how they're going to end the Super Bowl, especially when it's I'm a Raider fan, obviously, and I hate the Chiefs, but it feels like they get away with a lot in this situation. I felt like they got away with a lot against Cincinnati. In the AFC Championship game, I thought there were some really, really bad calls in that situation, including the do-over. So yeah, it was almost like kismet that they threw the flag to end the season to give the Chiefs the Super Bowl. I thought that was pretty awful, to say the least, for lack of more rough words that we say in Spaces.
Exactly. Spaces. Bring your hard hat if you come to Raider Spaces when you see my name. You see Solo.
You better bring the earmuffs.
Bring something. So let's go. So we went through the defense. I went through all the defensive part of it. Now I envision them I envision the Raiders left tackle Colton Miller, center Parham, and they're gonna have all these guys battle out for right tackle. They could draft the right tackle, but we'll see. But I think the most pressing need would be guards. So because Alex Bars ain't cutting it. He's no Steve Wisniewski.
Yeah.
So
I honestly think they're going to have two new starting guards. I think Parham is going to be moved to center. I think we talked about that earlier. But I really believe that both starting guards for the Raiders are not on the roster right now.
They're not.
So we're gonna look at it. We're gonna look at a couple guys. So the big name that I keep seeing everywhere that I've done a little bit of homework on is Jackson Kirkland from Washington. So he's actually a huge guard. He's 6'7". In that 6'6", 6'7" range, and he's like 320 pounds, 320 plus pounds. We'll see the actual measurements in the combine, which I really like the combine, because you see a lot of players with I would say a little bit of exaggerated height and weights a lot of the time. Like Bryce Young, they're going to list him as 6 foot until we actually see that he's only 5'10". In that regard, I think is actually a thing that's going to happen. So that's why I like the combine a lot. But yeah, so that's one guy that we're looking at. Depending on his size, I think he's going to be a really good interior lineman from Washington. Nick Brocker from Ole Miss is another guy that I really like in terms of like where he's probably going to go. Because and the way I'm going with this is all these positional guys, I'm kind of skipping over the consensus top guys, like Osiris Torrance from Florida is going to be the number 1 guard that a lot of people have. But if that guy goes in the first round, I am fully anticipating not taking any position but quarterback in the first round. So I'm thinking with my Raider hat, my Raider GM hat, that I'm like, okay, Andrew Voorhees from USC, who you know well, Emil Okoye from Alabama, who's another guard that's going to look pretty good in this situation. Jackson Kirkland and Nick Brocker. Braden Daniels, who you probably also know from Utah, is that you've probably seen, 6'4", 300 pounds, good size, good body build, good hands, good push, things like that. Excuse me. That I think is going to be more up the alley of the Raiders, because I think first and second round, I think are going to be really primarily on a gigantic position in need for the Raiders. I think it's going to be interior pass rusher for the second round, and I think it's going to be quarterback for the first round. That's how I'm kind of viewing how this is going to go for their plan.
Yeah, I think that's going to be true. We'll see what they do as far as that goes. I definitely see 2 new starters. There may be a veteran and a guard, or they might go 2 guards as far as that goes.
They have so much flexibility to be able to make, and this is an incredibly critical offseason for Dave Ziegler. So Carr's gone, so there's no more Derek Carr to be able to look towards and be like, hey, we need a new quarterback. Josh McDaniels can't do this without his quarterback, or Ziegler can't be successful without their quarterback. So the pressure is on for Ziegler to have 11 picks that he has to get like half of them right in this situation. We have to come away with starters and 50, 60 million in cap space. Excuse me. Sorry. We've been sick all week. And like $50-60 million in cap space to be able to utilize for the free agency that we're going to have. And that's going to turn the Raiders around into a playoff contending team again. And you already have the core locked up. So this is an incredibly critical offseason for Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels, for that matter, to get it right. And there's so much flexibility for them to get it right. You could sign 2 guards in free agency and then spend the draft capital on defense. You could you could spend the draft capital on a couple defensive players, or spend the draft capital on trading for a couple players that might be available, i.e. Jalen Ramsey, or some position of need in that regard. You can use the money to sign a Bobby Wagner and put him in the middle of our defense with Max Crosby and Chandler Jones, and maybe draft a secondary member or an interior pass rusher. There's so much flexibility, but the one thing that actually has to happen is they have to get at least half of it right. Because the only way that they're going to pull themselves out of this, and as opposed to wasting all that money on Devontae Adams and Hunter Renfrow and all this, is to be able to get this offseason right, in like 100% right.
Yeah, I mean, they got it's going to be an interesting one to see, to say the least. Before we hit quarterback, you mentioned Jalen Ramsey, and what would it take to get him? And then what do you feel about Poyer's comments in Buffalo, where he wants to play in a state where they don't take half my check?
Yeah, Hoyer's actually on my list for a guy, along with Von Bell, are two safeties that I was looking at in free agency. I think both of them are not going to cost an arm and a leg to be able to get. Excuse me. Jalen Ramsey is going to be difficult because I think for a team like, say, Miami, who I think would be willing to give a first-round pick for a corner like that, I don't think that he's going to generate a first-round pick out of a lot of teams. But if there is that one, that's obviously who the Rams are going to trade with initially, first and foremost. I would be comfortable giving up this year's second and next year's second for a player like that. Because even though he's 28, I think he's still an elite corner. I think he's still an all-pro talent. I think he transforms your entire secondary. I think he transforms your entire game plan by having a player like that who's that capable at corner, who's a guy we haven't had someone like that in the secondary since Nambi. So like you have a guy that completely transforms your entire game plan on the defensive side, who is also leads with his ability. I mean, he leads by being one of the best guys at his position, period. And so when I saw the Bobby Wagner get released, I said, that's another guy. That's the guy that transforms your entire program on defense, because you put an all-pro, an elite all-pro talent who can still play at an elite all-pro level in the center of your locker room with a Max Crosby, and you have two guys already right there that are gonna help transform your whole locker room on the defensive side of the ball. And it's obviously what the Raiders need. So I think 2 seconds is what I would be comfortable with. He's only 28. He's still an elite talent, and he comes with a cap number, obviously. But if you don't have the money, or if you have the money, you need to spend the money in order to get guys. You spent the money to get Devontae Adams, and look how that worked out. He had an all-pro season. You spend the money for Darren Waller, and he's been really great for you over the last 4 years. He wasn't so great this year. He's been banged up a lot. But there are other circumstances with that. Hunter Renfrow is a great player. So you have these guys that you're spending the money on. Colt Miller had a good season. So you spend the money on these guys, you get what you paid for.
Yeah, no question about it.
You spend the money on a 1-year deal with Casey Hayward, and he leaves to Indianapolis the very next year. Then you're stuck with guys that are not going to be very good when you need them to be very good. And that's kind of one of the downfalls of the Raiders have been for the last 20 years is, you had a guy like Khalil Mack, you don't pay him, and then you're stuck with 11 sacks or 13 sacks the very next year when he's gone off to have an all-pro season with Chicago. So it is what it is. You pay people like that who earn that money, and it transforms, and you get the talent out of the ability. So
no question about it. So at the start of this show, I'm going to hit you up with a little bit of Hendon Hooker, a little all 22. So for folks who watch that and now you continue to watch the show with the draft stuff here with Anthony and myself. Let's start with Hooker. What are your thoughts about him? They kind of run with those wide splits. They don't really run the offense that the NFL that people run in the NFL. But obviously he does have ability to move. Yeah, he's older, but he's only 1 year older than Levis, which people just never talk about. So as far as that goes, but what are your thoughts about Hooker as we make our way up the list of quarterbacks here?
So Hooker has a fantastic arm, and out of the players that we've scouted, that I have 7 guys on my list for quarterback, and he's number 5, and I think that he's ahead of Tanner McKee in my opinion for ability. I don't like the idea that he, before the season has been out, that he'll be 26 and he'll be, 30 years old by the time his rookie deal expires. That's tough for me to wrap my head around in that regard. But some people have accurately let me know that it doesn't matter if he's super talented and he has the ability to be able to do that, because the Raiders need someone who can win. And if he has the ability and the talent to win, it doesn't matter how old he is. Look at Geno Smith. Geno Smith has had an unbelievably good career. career year, and he's 32. Excuse me. So I like Hendon Hooker. I like his arm. I think he moves well in the pocket. I think he has good instincts on the throws that he makes. I think he has good instincts on the defenses that he's reading. I thought the Alabama game was absolutely special with his ability to make the reads that he was making, needing to make against that type of defense. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. And I like the way he shifts the pocket. I think he's got the legs to be able to move. He's athletic in that regard. I hope he retains a lot of his athleticism because the knee injury was pretty devastating.
Yeah.
For that regard, especially at his age, to come into the season with an injury like that, already having a few years under his system. But under Josh Heupel's system, he looked fantastic at Tennessee. And you can't discredit that just because he's old or he's coming off an injury, because he looked the part. Every throw, every highlight, every ability that we saw over the last 2 years, he looked like an NFL quarterback, and you can't discredit that.
No question about it. What are your thoughts on, I know the people are going to have Richardson being the best quarterback in history of football by the time the draft comes out. So, so what are your thoughts about Anthony Richardson?
So he was a guy that I was on early when we were doing our early mock drafts. I had the Raiders still trading back, trading Derek Carr to the Jets for a swap with their 17th round, their 17th overall pick. So back in fantasy land is where I thought Richardson should go in the back half of the 15. I still feel that way. If the Raiders, someone just asked me today, if how would you feel if the Raiders took him at 7? I think he has all the ability. I really do. I think he's got a good head on his shoulders. I think he's talented. I think he's got a good arm. I think he has really good instincts to know when to take off and when to use his legs and when to throw the ball. But there are some major downsides to a lot of the highlight tape. Is that when you watch a lot of it, you have to watch. I like to look at everybody's worst plays. So I think we talked about this earlier or last year, but in the spaces, I like to look at what they're doing wrong in games and why are they doing those things wrong, and look at the tape of some of their worst games like Alabama or some of their worst games. And I think Tennessee, he had a good game or he had a rough one. But you want to look at their worst games and be like, not just their highlight tape, because their highlight tape is going to make everybody fall in love with them. That's what made me fall in love with Anthony Richardson at first. I think raw. I think you have to give him a year to learn the system, give him a year to refine his talents and his ability, learn the NFL pro system and the ability. But someone asked me, how would you feel if they took him at 7? I said, look, if they really truly believe that Anthony Richardson is the guy, then you can't fault them for taking him at 7. Would I take him at 7? No. I would try to trade back and try to get him back there and acquire more draft capital depending on who fell to us at 7. So if it's Levis and Richardson at 7 and they want to and have to get a quarterback, then I'm going to go Richardson in that regard. I'm not going to fault them for doing that. I think Richardson can be the second best quarterback in this draft behind Stroud, and I really believe that his upside justifies and warrants the hype. But you never know until a guy gets on the field or what he's like in the interview rooms or what his attitude is like and what all that is, because right now it's all show. Right now he has a publicist. Right now he has an agent telling him all the right things to say, all the right things to do. So it's hard to know someone's personality and work ethic just based off that alone.
Yeah, that's true. And I think work ethic is the biggest thing about Richardson, because we've seen a guy who has elite work ethic in Jalen Hurts. Just improve his throwing ability, improve his accuracy. People can say whatever they want about the offense they run. Oh, this is the offense tailor-made. Well, that's okay. You know what? That's smart coaching. Instead of trying to fit the quarterback into the system, make the system and put the quarterback in a system that he can just come together, and you see the results. They're scoring, hella points all year left and right.
It didn't look the same with Gardner Minshew at quarterback.
It didn't.
It did for about 3 quarters, and that was it.
That was it. Yeah. Levis here. Levis. What are your thoughts about Levis? I probably like him a little bit more than some people. I'll admit that I do like him a little bit. I think sometimes good quarterbacks come from situations like he's in, switching offensive coordinators. All that stuff going on there. Injuries, stuff like that. What are your thoughts about Levis? Because I'm sure he's gonna, if he throws at the combine, he's gonna wow everybody.
Yeah, I think he's one of those guys that People are going to naturally compare him to the Zach Wilson stuff, and they're going to be wary of him just because the Zach Wilson has been so bad in the NFL.
Yeah.
But he was so hyped prior to that draft because of how he threw, because of how he worked out, because of his season at BYU. This is what makes quarterback the most difficult position to evaluate, is because you can look at a guy like say Josh Allen, for example, who didn't light it up at college at all.
Yeah.
He didn't have great numbers coming out. He had Will Levis numbers, to be honest with you. He didn't look great. He didn't look like a guy that was going to come out and be one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL. So evaluating a guy like that is always difficult. But what you want to look for is one of the biggest variables I think you can tell from a quarterback by just watching tape is how comfortable is he amidst the pass rush? What reads is he making in the pass rush? You don't have to have the right scheme. You don't have to have the right coaching. You don't have to have the right wide receivers, the right running backs, or the right tight ends to be able to see someone's instincts and how they play under pressure when the pocket collapses and what kind of decisions they're making. This is one of the things that I think Will Levis does really well. I think he understands how to shift the pocket when he needs to, and when to make the right throw, and when to and when to put the touch on the ball, and when to throw the ball in regards of his touch. I guess people say pro touch. So his pro touch on the ball and amidst the pressure of what he's getting. He didn't have a lot of great support at Kentucky. He's not going to have. He wasn't throwing to a first round wide receiver or a first round tight end. He wasn't throwing to a running back. Like a lot of people will speculate. Well, if you put that TCU team and you put Will Levis as a quarterback as opposed to Max Duggan, then TCU is a national champ. I don't know if I agree with that. I've heard people say it, but it's like that's the difference in scouting ability and scouting quarterbacks versus one guy or the other. It's like, what are they doing with the variables that they have around them, and are they making winning plays? Are they being let down? Are they making the right decisions? Are they not making the right decisions? What are they doing under pressure? Are they throwing turnovers, or are they making the crucial plays when they have to make it? And like I said, one of the things that I like about him the most is that I think he makes the right throw under pressure. And that's really, clearly got the arm, clearly has the athleticism, but does he make the right throw under pressure? And I think he does. And I think that's where a lot of people are trying to separate his numbers, his support, his lack of like the wowness of his game versus someone like CJ Stroud, who has all of it, who looks like he has everything that you want in the quarterback, especially after that Georgia game.
Yeah, question about it. So we're down to the last 2 now here. Stroud, obviously, did a great job, and probably his head coach is kind of lost him a national championship down the stretch of that game.
Sure.
As far as that goes, going for that long field goal. But he played great against Georgia. We all know how many dogs Georgia has literally on that defense. What are your thoughts about Stroud? And what do you think about Bryce Young as well? Because is the weight good? I mean, can he play? Can he throw? Yes, but is the weight? Can he get hit by Joey Bosa and survive and play 17 games?
Yeah, so far we've seen that no small quarterback that size has been able to hold up. Like Drew Brees dealt with a lot of injuries towards the end of his career. He couldn't really hold. He was not the same guy in the last 2-3 years of his career. And he was like around that frame. He was a 6 foot, maybe 5'11", 200-pound even type quarterback. A lot to will make the comparison to Russell Wilson, but Russell Wilson is gigantic. He's like a stocky quarterback. He's a big, stocky frame. He can use the run. Because when he doesn't cleanly get hit because he's athletic enough, but he's also he's like 215, 220 pounds. He's a big quarterback. But when you get a 5'10", 190-pound guy in there, I just don't, and especially the guy that doesn't run like Kyler Murray runs. And even then, Kyler Murray is still dealing with his own injuries. So it's really tough for me to see a guy that is that size and be like, I'm going to give him the keys to my franchise. And you can call it old-fashioned. You can call it, the old head thing, the way of thinking about a quarterback should have size. But if I'm taking a guy basically on solely on his merits, and those merits are even, which a lot of people think Young and Stroud's merits are very even in their intangibles and their physical ability to be able to throw the ball, then I'm going to want the guy who's 6'3" and 220 pounds over a guy who's 5'10" and 190. I can't. Me personally, it's hard for me to be like, and it's not fair, and it's an easy way out, and I understand that because one guy is inevitably going to be better than the other guy. Their guys are right down the middle. There's no such thing as that in evaluating. any kind of NFL player. And so, but in my opinion, I mean, I think Stroud is the best quarterback anyway in this draft. And so when it comes down to the two, I'm taking Stroud 100% over Bryce Young, just because I want the size and the ability. I saw what he did under pressure. I saw what he did under the biggest lights. I saw what he did all year. And he feels like he just keeps to himself in a lot of that regard. It feels like he just says, I'm going to take care of my business. I'm not trying to rub it into anybody. I'm not trying to throw it down anybody's throat and be like, this is why I'm good and this is why you're not kind of situation. I don't see that in him. I just see a guy that shows up. He looks like he takes care of business. He's well loved by his teammates. He's a leader. And honestly, the last two quarterbacks from Ohio State felt that way to me. Justin Fields and CJ Stroud both feel that way to me. It just feels like they're not taking their talents and their accolades and everything, their accomplishments in college to do that. And they're not being like, this is how good I am compared to you. I don't feel that from them. I don't get that from either guy. It feels like they want to play, they want to be successful, and they want to win. They want to do what it takes to win. And in that regard, in my opinion, that along with the intangibles that I see, the fierceness of his competitive ability when he played against Georgia, how awesome he was in that game. I just felt like that was it. I felt like that was the guy. That is what that is to me is what the best quarterback in college looked like in that regard. And I that's who I think he is. I think he's the guy. I would take him number one overall.
Yeah, I love I love the game. I love I think it was a Texas game where Bryce Young, showed his grit and came back and played that. But it's going to be hard. It's going to be very difficult for me. That's your job as the NFL. I mean, that's basically going to be you're going to get fired if he plays 5 games a year. So it's up to. I think
that is one thing that you look at Bryce Young and saying, and
because he can play.
He literally did not have any of the guys that Mac Jones and Tua had. There was no first round receivers on the Alabama team, and they were winning because of him and because the defense was keeping them in it, and because of his ability to remain calm, look at the defense, look at the scoreboard, and be like, "It's okay, guys, I got this. Don't worry. I'm going to put up 40 here. We're gonna get through this."
He found a way to win.
It's a unique calmness that I only saw in really Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, when I evaluated him, I said, this guy is like the new Joe Cool. He doesn't get rattled. He's comfortable in the pocket. He can move when he wants to move. He can take off when he needs to take off. And he has he can make almost every throw. And he's so innately calm and cool when he needs to be that it just melts out to the rest of the offense. And everybody plays more comfortable and more loose. And they have the ability to come back and make those big plays that they need to make under those tense and pressure-filled moments. It's because it emanates from the quarterback, and that's what I think Bryce Young is. That's why I think so many people are going to struggle with this, because when you watch him and you see him in those pressure-filled situations, he's not even breaking a sweat. He's just not. He doesn't. It doesn't seem like he's concerned at all. Either it's the silent confidence or it's the calm and cool poise that he has, but that is what it's going to make it so difficult to pick between them. Me personally, I like Stroud's ability. I like the show up and hard hat work ethic that I think he portrays, that he gives off. But man, you cannot teach how to be calm under pressure like that, especially coming from the Raiders, where we just had a guy who didn't seem like he was like that at all, or at least lost that somewhere along the way.
Yeah, no question about it. Here with Anthony Lopez here. We're gonna you can check out his Twitter at the Solo Lopez, and then a lot of really good fantasy football stuff, a lot of good and Raiders stuff there as well. Let's just talk about the elephant in the room, and like that he's gone now, so he's officially gone, not a Raider anymore. I would say, but this is the one faction now. I just saw a report from Rap Sheet about Derek Carr saying that it was about fit, it's not about money, stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, so how do you tell you're getting stuff from an agent without telling you get stuff from an agent, right? Sure. If it's about the money, if when somebody tells you it's not about the money, it's about the money.
It's always about the money.
Always about the money. So I think my problem I have in this situation is, how come, the quote unquote team guy, team player, captain, all the stuff like that can't pull a Kirk Cousins, can't do a Joe Flacco, and just take a prove it deal. Like you have scars throughout your career. Why don't you just take a prove it deal? let's say 22, maybe, or 18 to 22 million.
Yeah.
It's not going to break you financially. Number one. Number two, you're going to have a big year. You can sign an even bigger contracts because the quarterback money is only going up and up and up. It's almost like he wants to avoid having a pressure season like that because he might not perform at a high level.
Well, he just went through the pressure season and he utterly and completely failed. I mean, they put the void deal into that because it was a 1-year deal basically. If he couldn't perform like he needed to, so maybe he's looking to be wanted, and I think the guy. But I think at this stage of his career, I don't think a team is going to be like, "You're the guy. Let me give you a 3-year, $140 million deal, and you're going to be the guy." I don't think that's in the cards for him at this point. I'll be all happy to eat crow if he gets that kind of deal. Personally, I thought the Raiders could have leveraged his extension against him in that regard and been like, this is the only way that you're going to be able to get this contract extension if you accept the trade. But clearly, the agent was doing some type of agent work and saying, "Hey, we'll be able to get somewhere close to that. And if you perform with a new team in any way in that regard, you're going to set yourself up for bigger money anyway, especially only being 32. Geno Smith is set himself up for gigantic money this offseason, more money than he'll have ever made in his career combined in this regard. So it can be done. And I'm sure that they looked at that situation and said, well, if he can do it, our guy can do it. And that's ultimately probably what led to them to just informing the Raiders that we're never going to accept the trade under these circumstances. And so with that money situation, if he's looking for $35 million a year, I mean, it's plausible for someone to give him a 2-year, $70 million deal or a 3-year, but I don't know who's out there who's desperate enough to do it, to be honest with you. I think the Carson Wentz situation, I think the Matt Ryan situation. Yeah. These situations where you're looking at a guy who's not quite that upper echelon anymore, who can't quite get it done, and they're just almost wasting years. You're like wasting your young talent. And I mean, we've been back and forth with Jets Twitter already, with a lot of people there hyping themselves into the Derek Carr situation when we watched every snap of his career for 9 years, and we know that he's not a $35 million quarterback. He's the bridge quarterback. He's a guy to get you to your next guy, and he's going to stabilize the position by not being hurt. But at the same time, he's not going to win you a Super Bowl. I don't care what roster he has around him. I cannot and will not believe at this point in Derek Carr's career that he can win 4 playoff games in a row against the best talent in the NFL and get you to the ring. I don't see it anymore. I stopped seeing it around 2017. I didn't think he was the guy after he regressed in that season. Yeah. Certainly in 2018 when he wasn't the guy. 2019 when they collapsed down the stretch. It just all revolves around quarterback play.
Yeah,
and I just don't think that that's the case anymore. I just don't think he has it in him.
Just think about it, because you're a Braves fan. I'm a San Francisco Giant fan. One of the two things that in sports that you're just, if you can do it well, you're gonna get super paid, is that if you're a starting pitcher or if you're a quarterback.
Yeah.
So now a quarterback has been on the market for how long?
Yeah.
And still looking for home. Still looking for a
before
home.
The season ended, they knew he was going to be a free agent.
Exactly. So everybody, if Aaron Rodgers was a free agent right now, just talking about a free agent, not talking about like the whole trade thing. I mean, how long would Aaron Rodgers actually be on the market? Like, you know what I mean? Come on.
I think a lot of teams would put him on the top of their board and want to try to take him, off the board right away. I mean, the Jets thing was weird. Really bizarre. The whole he can be a first ballot Hall of Famer, which I said it then, I'll say it now. Derek Carr and I both have the same chances of being a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback. It's just not in the cards for either one of us. So both of our percentages are exactly the same. It's just not going to happen. And so if that was the case and they truly believe that, then he'd be a Jet right now, because why would you allow someone like that to just go off and bully his market against you? Yeah, I would offer him the biggest deal he could possibly get. Sign him right now if we think he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer and go win some Super Bowls.
Yeah,
clearly that's not the case.
I mean, they're probably interested, but they're interested at the right price. Sure. And the price is not going to be 35 or 40 million. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But
yeah,
I mean, maybe it only takes one team to be very desperate, whether it's Carolina or whoever. But I think it just shows. You look at Washington; they're going to go with a rookie quarterback next year.
Yeah,
I mean, you might as well just go. I mean, it sets up your franchise better. Just go with the rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
Who's making small money and take it from there as far as that goes.
Yeah, and the Raiders have the ability because I think their coach can work with a rookie and he can work with a veteran. I don't think there's a lot of coaches in the NFL that can work with both and be successful with both.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't like Josh McDaniels. I get it. He's unproven. He had a bad year with the Raiders. I get it. I get the drawbacks to Josh McDaniels. I did not feel like Josh McDaniels was as bad as he was in Denver. I didn't think that he was as bad as he was in St. Louis when he was the offensive coordinator there. I actually thought the offense was much different than under Gruden. I thought it was much more potent when it needed to be in that regard. I think that quarterback play was so bad in the second half of games, especially down or in the last part of second half of games. Mm-hmm. I cannot just chalk that up to, and I hate this trope more than anything, but bad play calling. It's like I'm so anti people saying, the play calling is so bad. It's like, oh, is it though? You only complain about play calling that doesn't work. So what do you really know about play calling? What do any of us really know about NFL play calling? So, situationally when things like didn't work and what you would rather do in certain situations. But in terms of like all the variables that go into it, it's so difficult. But quarterback play is about execution. So even if you're getting a play call and you're throwing the ball out of bounds in the red zone 3 or 4 times a game, and you're not making the quality play that you need to make, that it's not just, that's a bad play call. That's execution from the quarterback. The last resort design is typically not to throw it out of bounds in the red zone. It's to try to make something happen with your legs or to check it down to your safety valve. Even if that's throwing the ball to the ground at the guy's feet or giving him a really low possibility to catch the ball, throwing it downward into the end zone, you're still giving your guy an opportunity to try to make a play in the red zone. You're not just throwing it out of bounds and being like, hey, I'm going to complete 42% of my passes in the red zone, which is what Derek Carr did this year, which is horrendous.
Yeah.
So at some point, you have to look at the game's most important and impactful position and be like, how bad was the play that we were getting in that situation versus what I got in years past with Tom Brady and Mac Jones, Matt Castle, and Jimmy G, who were all good in the red zone. Yeah. Strangely, we're all good in the red zone, and Derek Carr was not under McDaniel. So I don't buy the play calling thing. I don't buy that McDaniels doesn't know what he's doing. I don't buy that he was this atrocious head coach. I think there were major mistakes. I think there were mistakes that he made in the second halves of games, in sticking with Derek Carr or not sticking with Derek Carr or not being able to target your best players as much as they should have. And again, I don't know if that was just the quarterback play not doing what he needed to do, or if that was just, hey, we're going to move away from Devontae and use him more as a decoy for the second half of this game. I don't know personally, but in that regard, I know it was a combination of a lot of things. But I know that Derek Carr wasn't the guy before Josh McDaniels got here, and he was bad in the red zone before Josh McDaniels got here. So in terms of just blaming the coach for that, I don't buy it. I'm giving him this year to see with the new quarterback, likely 2 new quarterbacks. They're probably a veteran and a rookie guy that they'll be able to utilize and develop and build through that. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, when you get really poor play from the game's most important position, which the Raiders did last year, basically all year, the last year's results are going to happen the way they do. I mean, obviously they're not going to blow 5 leads like they did, but it's the NFL now. Look at the Super Bowl. Teams are scoring so quickly and so fast and so at rampant effort. Like the best team, consensus team in the NFL was the Eagles this year, and they blew a 10-point lead in the Super Bowl to the Chiefs. It happens. It happens so much more regularly than than it did in the years past. We're going to see it all the time now because teams can score on a whim. They can score a multitude of touchdowns. It's so quickly now. So it just is what it is. You have to adapt for the new game.
Yeah, no question about it. And hopefully the Raiders and Ziegler and McDaniel can both do that as well. So yeah. Solo, thanks for joining us here. Keep up the good work. As we'll see in Twitter Spaces. And bring your vest if you're coming at us. Bring your vest. That's all I'm saying. Bring your vest.
Yeah, you better get ready. I appreciate you, Dwayne. Thanks so much, man.
No problem. Take care, brother.
Take care, man.